Hello, everyone. Chris Kapchis, Just on Park Real Estate here.
I'm Doug Gubitz. Nice to see everyone again. This is great.
Yes. We've been decanting real estate for some time. Correct?
Yeah, this is our 6th episode, I believe.
And today we're going to decant kind of the alpha to the omega of real estate. Some bizarre subjects, and I think you'll find them quite entertaining, as well as, I think, educational as well.
Yeah, we have 3 major topics to deal with.
We have 2 amazing wines, and consistent with what we have been saying at our previous podcasts, as a result of, think Canadian, arms out, whatever.
Elbows up.
Elbows up, whatever that expression is. We've been featuring Canadian wines, and particularly very local wines that you see here. I should stop that tapping.
Chris wears his watch upside down, for those of you who don't know.
And you can see we have 2 wines from Prince Edward County.
Again, which is great.
From a very, very small vineyard called Exaltet. And I have some tasting notes here.
How do you know about these guys?
I ran into them just driving through the county once. Someone said they make the best Pinot and the best Chardonnay in the county. I'll leave that for you to decide.
And you. Have you had these 2 before?
I have had them both. I've had them both.
I see you
So
have
I'm
some
not going to
tasting
pass.
notes.
I have tasting notes. And so in addition to the wines, which we do every podcast, we're also going to look at 3 really bizarre subjects. They aren't interconnected, but I think just from a real estate the decanting standpoint, that you'll find them quite interesting. But I would like to start with the wine.
Okay.
And I think probably you should start with the softer one, the Chardonnay.
All right.
I don't know if our technical people are actually showing the wine, but...
So it's a 2021?
It's a 2021 Chardonnay, and I'll give you the tasting notes and see if you agree.
Should we try it first and then?
Okay.
Yeah.
You try
That's
it first.
how you do this.
We'll also let
our expert wine taster.
Our expert wine tasters in the background.
Excellent.
There.
Okay, it's 13% alcohol, which is very nice. And an excellent temperature, I might add, boss. Very
It was chilled this morning.
beautiful. Perfect.
I attended at the vineyard myself.
Did you really?
Yes, I did.
Did you buy a case of each, or this?
No, just these 2.
I suspect they're pricey.
They are probably the most pricey of the wines that you'll get from the county.
Okay.
Okay.
Christian, you want to come and grab one? So I don't whack I have to get up. Oh, my goodness. Coming apart.
Excellent.
It seems.
So this is a Chardonnay, and if you want to just nose it and
Yes, sir.
and taste it,
Pretty rich on the nose, I would say. Very rich, almost sweet on the nose, although you can't really smell sweet. It just, the perception is sweet. Very, very dark color.
yes, as you can see.
Well, I don't know if they can see.
Long finish.
Well, it's a huge wine.
This is a huge one.
Yeah. Well, this is not what I would have thought you would have otherwise liked.
Candidly, this is not.
Yeah.
I'm more oriented toward the Chablis.
A lighter, more
Lighter,
crisper style.
Crisper.
This is kind of more
This
syrupy
is,
and smooth.
the tasting notes with this is that it's light in color, but I don't agree.
It's definitely not lighter
I don't
color.
agree.
Although the lighting in here is a
Yeah,
little dark.
lighting could maybe is giving.
But I
it,
think it's yellowy.
But it's got a yellow gold bouquet of yellow apples.
I've never had a yellow apple. I don't know.
Melons? Do you get melons?
No.
Flowers?
Flowers. Are they talking about the nose?
Talking about the nose.
No.
It says it's very structured, and I would agree.
Totally.
This is a very structured.
Yeah, it is. It's almost kind of like a Sauterny kind of a smell. Like
This is actually a brilliant Chardonnay, but not one that
you would drink every day.
I would drink.
It's very rich on the finish. It's like
It's
got a
very rich.
massive mouthfeel.
Yes.
Not quite California, but still.
You could surprise someone thinking that's California.
Yeah.
Rounded, balanced, and here's an expression I've never heard before: ethereal penetration.
You've heard the expression, but not as it relates to
Not as it
wine.
relates to wine.
We might have to edit that piece out.
Yeah. We can see how that sounds afterwards.
Ethereal penetration. I'm surprised the writer actually went so far as to put that out there. Okay.
That's in the tasting notes, and I didn't make them up.
I think he means like depth of palate
Yes.
and
Yeah,
length of finish.
Length of finish.
Yeah.
Length of finish. So that's the.
That's it?
That's the Chardonnay.
Does he have a score?
Then we
Don't
have-
say it if he does.
He doesn't have a score. He doesn't have a score.
Okay.
But this is again from Exaltet in the
County.
In the county.
Small production, I'm assuming.
I should mention to our viewers that our next podcast is actually going to take place outside of this studio here, and we're going to be in Tironi's, which is a local restaurant establishment.
Did you guys know that we're moving offshore?
Yeah, and
Or off-site?
we're going to be tasting some big Nebbiolos, from what I understand.
which are being provided to us
Yes.
by Toronto.
So we're looking forward to that and sort of expanding our
Geography.
Our geography. But why don't you pour the
I guess
why don't we get into a subject and then we'll do a little.
Why don't we pour it so it airs
Pour it,
out,
yes, so it airs
out a
out,
little
yes.
bit, okay? That's my thinking.
I'm actually going to get into one of the subjects. And
Do you want to say what the three subjects are?
well, we're gonna discuss a book called Boom Bust and Echo, and as it relates to what's happening in the real estate world today. We're also going to talk about the transference of keys at the time of closing
Yeah.
a real estate
This
transaction.
is a crazy case.
And
Ridiculous.
lastly, we're going to talk about a subject.
Wait. This is the kind of color we like. Look at that.
Yeah, look at that.
That's a nice color.
I think you'll be very impressed
This
with this
has
Pinot.
this looks enticing.
Very impressive.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
And the last subject that we're going to be talking about is the hated. And I can't say that strongly enough. The hated
Foreign buyer tax.
foreign buyers tax. No, the foreign buyers prohibition.
Yeah.
We
Sorry,
can't-
yeah, prohibition, sorry.
And the reason why we're going to be talking about it is because at the time that this podcast is being recorded, we're in the tail end of the election campaign, and nowhere in any of the documentation, any of the speeches by any of the, certainly any of the potential leaders, have they raised the issue of the foreign buyers prohibition.
Correct. And I'm mistaken, you said the word tax, but even in the most recent provincial election, nothing was talked about with respect to the 25% provincial foreign buyers tax. So they're hand in hand, but more poignant is the prohibition.
So let's begin with this book here, Boom, Bust, and Echo. There are probably people that are watching this podcast that have actually heard of this book and
Have or haven't?
have.
Oh, yeah.
And in some cases may have even read it. It is not a current bestseller, just to be clear, in
That's
case
for
anyone
sure.
wants to rush out. In fact, you may not even be able to find this book on the bookshelf anymore. I suspect you can't.
Maybe Amazon has it.
Maybe. But it was written by a chap named David Foote, and he was also assisted by another fellow named Stoveman. But this book was published in 1996, and it was the rave.
Yeah, everybody read it.
Everybody read this book, and it was primarily about demographics, but was deeply steeped in real estate. And I'd like to use an expression, but I can't because this is going to be broadcast, but it scared the bejesus out of us, those of us that were in real estate at the time that this book came out.
It was foretelling the future, and it was not a pretty picture.
That's well said, well said. It was foretelling the future, but not, what did you say?
Not well said.
No, no, it was well said.
It just didn't come true. It wasn't true.
It wasn't true.
Yeah.
It was extremely well said. Very well written book, very well researched book. But I want
And it was, and everybody, it was almost cult-like. People
100%. Look,
people
these are
thought
my notes from the 90s.
People thought this was what the future was going to be, and this person was the authority on it.
Correct.
Mr. Foote. Except it didn't turn out that way.
And I'm going to read a couple of passages, if I may, Doug.
I love when you read to me.
Okay. And these passages are passages that relate to the real estate component in this book. And I have a reason for doing this, of course.
You have a reason for doing everything if you don't.
Thank you. I take that as
careful,
a compliment.
You're dropping your tasting notes. It was a compliment.
As I said, this was a book about demographics, and he was talking about how various groups of people are going to behave going forward, and hence the boom, the bust, and the echo. The bust, of course, is relating to how the boomers were going to behave as it relates to real estate. So I did want to read you this. It says, because most of the needs of the boomers are filled, even that he got wrong. And you have to remember, this was pre the use of the internet. I mean, the internet was around, but hardly anybody was using it at the time.
For those who don't necessarily have a sense of what the boomers generation was, why don't you tell us?
That's a good point. Basically, 1947 to 1948, being born after the Second World War. And then up to about 1965, 1966. That group of people is known as the boomer cohort that were born during those periods.
And they were heady times.
Yeah. And so this is what Mr. Foote is speaking about when he talks about the boomers. So he goes, because most of the needs of the boomers are filled, real estate is no longer a growth industry. When we were reading that back in 1996, this was heartbreaking to be in the real estate business and to be told that real estate has no future.
Plus, we were just coming to the end of a terrible real estate recession that went from 1990 to the latter part of 1995. We were just coming out of it in 1996, feeling a little bit better. I joined Chestnut Park, in fact, in 1995, and there was an air of an uplifted air.
And for the edification of our audience, in 1996, the average sale price in the Greater Toronto Area was $196,000. So keep that in mind, because we'll touch on what the current average sale price is. So that's what he said. He goes on to say that means it is a much better place to lose money than to make money in real estate.
I wonder if he was just feeling really beat up by that recession for having to say this.
If you're a boomer who thinks your house is going to be your pension plan, think again.
Well, I don't think he could have been more wrong.
Well, clearly,
Could not have been more
passage
wrong.
of time has demonstrated how wrong he really was.
Unbelievably wrong.
Yeah, and one other passage a little further in the book, he says, homes in these good inner city districts will continue to enjoy modest increases in value through the rest of the 1990s and beyond into the 2000s. Meanwhile, once the Gen Xers are accommodated, starter homes in the distant suburbs of major cities will begin to decline in value, or at best, maintain stable price. That's because the baby bust generation, who will make up much of the market for starter homes in the years after 2000, is smaller than the boomers, and that there will be a huge slowdown in demand. Well, two things that he got wrong. One, underestimated the use of the internet and the impact that it would have on society. And two, immigration.
And the veracity of the boomers.
Yeah.
He thought we were done. I'm a boomer, so I can speak to this specifically.
So am I.
He thought, yeah, so are you. So I think he felt that, one and done. You settle your family in a house, and that's it. You do nothing with real estate.
And just as a last comment, some studies in the United States have recently demonstrated that 45% of all real estate transactions today are being conducted by boomers. Exactly the opposite. So, what's the point of raising this?
This was like a Bible, too.
Yeah, not just to beat
Mr. Foote.
Mr. Foote up.
I wonder how he's feeling about this now.
I don't know.
Be interesting to reach out to him.
It'd be interesting to reach out to him. You're right. Maybe
He might be a good person to have at the podcast and
Yeah.
see what he thinks about his projections.
But the point is, predictability in real estate is very difficult. And I think it's fair to say that real estate, for the reasons that we've mentioned, one, as I said, the internet, but secondly, population growth in the GTA is going to always be in demand. And contrary to what Mr. Foote said, we're going to continue to see average sale prices continue to go up. So I mentioned 1996, $196,000. It's currently the average sale price, as we speak, about $1,160,000. And that includes condominium apartments. If we were to extract condominium apartments,
1516
higher, closer to 2 million
for detached houses.
for detached houses. So the fact that we're going through a difficult period now with the tariffs and the fear and the uncertainty associated with the tariffs, we have to take some comfort in the fact that the current situation, as was happening back then, is not permanent. And when it comes to real estate, there will be continued growth. May not be growth immediately, but we're going to go in that direction once again.
But we've always seen, since probably pre-war times, real estate markets have oscillated.
Correct. But on a chart that is continually going up.
Exactly. So in Mr. Foote's estimation, the party was over. Like, we've used up real estate.
Absolutely.
And don't go buying it with a view to investing and using it as your pension plan. You should never have done that anyhow, but his point was incorrect.
And now we have a common cliche, as you know, if you don't own real estate, you're going to die poor.
Right. Well, that's what you've said that many times, and I think that's been established. But for those who are trying to buy real estate at these incredibly high
Very
prices
difficult.
and still high interest rates, in
fact, that would probably be an interesting podcast to decant the affordability issues.
which is our biggest crisis.
Yes, that's affecting real estate.
And the
right
cost
now.
of living was something that I've been harping on for
Correct.
a long time, juxtaposed against affordability. But this has been proven so wrong, and I'm the case in point, and I know there's tens of thousands of boomers who have relied on real estate as a portion of their portfolio for the long term,
100%.
and has proven to be an excellent asset class.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. I think the immigration piece is the biggest piece of that. I don't know why he didn't put his mind to that. It seems such a well-researched book that he missed that piece. But he clearly did miss that piece.
He was using data looking backwards
Right.
as opposed to data looking forward. And I think that's and again, if he had the internet, it might have been easier, especially if he had ChatGPT, could ask it.
Yeah, fair
and
enough.
it would have answered all the questions.
Good point.
No problem.
Well,
tell us about...
what got you onto this?
Well, because there's so much fear about real estate prices now declining as a result of the uncertainty of the geopolitical issues that we're facing. And I just wanted to make it clear that we've had issues where people have thought it was going to decline in the past, and real estate has proven them wrong.
But look how tenacious prices have been. It astonishes you and me every single day.
Even as a professional in this business,
Yes.
it still astonishes me.
You remember back in the early 90s when we had a terrible real estate recession. Every house was on the market. Whether it was on the market or not, it was for sale, and prices were tumbling.
They did.
And here we are now in the last number of years in a really super difficult real estate environment, and prices are continuing
They're not
to go up.
They're not going like this, but there's continuing.
But they're not falling.
They're not falling.
Which is astonishing.
Not falling.
You'd think when affordability is challenged, something has to give. Either interest rates come down very seriously, or prices come down to meet affordability.
Huge
and
demand.
that hasn't happened.
Huge demand.
Huge demand. And very low supply.
Huge demand.
Very low supply, notwithstanding what you hear in the press about how much supply has increased 15, 18, 20% over the last year. It's categorically not true in the neighborhoods where
But maybe
people want to buy.
that takes us to the other subject that you were going to kind of lead with, and that is the prohibition on foreign buyers. The political perspective on that is that you have all these foreign buyers coming in. They're the ones that are causing these house prices to go up.
And reducing supply for those in need.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is, and I don't want to steal any of your thought.
No, go ahead.
But the fact of the matter is, we've had the foreign buyers prohibition at the federal level. for now going on to 3 years?
Started in 2023. It was supposed to be a 2-year program, 23 and 24. Near the end of 24, they extended it for a further 2 years, 25 and 26.
And what did we just say about prices?
They're still increasing.
Shouldn't they have gone down?
Oh, absolutely. You think you pull back on a whole marketplace of people who can buy, prices have to come down to find the buyers. Hasn't happened.
Hasn't happened.
Although it has.
That's a different market. That's an investor market.
But we need that.
And we had a podcast on
I know,
that
but we
before.
need that investor market.
We need it, no question.
Look what's happening to that. Where 24 some odd projects have been canceled in 2025 already. About 5,500 units that were coming on stream are now on hold, in abeyance.
We're almost at our lowest point in new construction starts.
Has there ever been a time that you can think of in the recent past where we need that foreign buyer prohibition to be lifted? It's right now.
Right now, absolutely. And not only just in the GTA, but in other areas in Canada as well. Vancouver is in desperate need of it because they need the investor money in order to be able to build some of these projects that are not getting off the ground.
So explain to me, because you are very good at this stuff, in the course of this election campaign, not a single party has said a word about the fact that the foreign buyer prohibition has run its course and it's time to be lifted.
But it goes back to everything we've talked about, all the political optics, the political grandstanding. No one is going to mention it because in some way it's going to be misinterpreted.
That's an excellent point. Well said. You're absolutely right. Yeah. They are afraid that it'll be misinterpreted.
Correct. But so as a result, we're stuck with it. Now, technically, the foreign buyers ban is to come to an end at the end of 2027?
2026.
2026.
So January 1st, 2027. Unless they extend it again. And there might be political will to do
they
will.
They might.
They might.
They might.
But you and I have talked about this. I just, you know what? No, you're absolutely right. They are afraid to raise this topic.
Correct.
But they really should.
But they should. That's the reason why we're raising it.
If they're being honest with the Canadian people, they should be talking to us about the fact.
Particularly when every one of the parties has said that they want to build more housing. Well, you're going to need money. You're going to need investment in order to do that.
When you cancel 5,500 units, where are all those workers who are going to be building those? What about all the materials that were being manufactured to support those buildings? What happens to all that?
You know what just struck me?
What happens to that?
Maybe David Foote didn't realize how bizarre the thinking of politicians is.
It was just a straightforward analysis?
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe. I think we got to reach out to this gentleman.
We should. We should.
I think it would be fascinating to.
I wonder if he's still
him.
teaching. He was a prophet, U of T. I don't know if he's still teaching.
Well,
anyway,
I bet
as
you'd
you
love
can
to do
see,
this.
we are strong believers in the elimination of that tax and that prohibition and the tax.
Absolutely.
In Ontario.
Just so you know, people in Ontario, if you buy a property, if you are not a Canadian citizen or not a permanent resident or don't have a
there are some other
little exceptions, and you purchase in Ontario, anywhere in Ontario, 25% tax on the purchase price.
Yeah.
It's the time for that.
Unconscionable.
It's enough already with this.
Unconscionable.
We're struggling enough in the real estate market. We don't need these kind of
I don't know
impediments.
where these units that we need, this housing that we need, is going to come from if we've cut off one of the major sources of funding for building them.
And we see this all over the streets in Toronto, you and I. Projects just not going forward.
Not going.
And in 3 or 4 years from now, that is going to be a huge problem. There it is.
What do you think of the Pinot? Or have you not tried that?
I haven't. Have you?
No. Let me.
I like the color. It's
Where's
darker.
my? Give me my tasting notes.
Hold on. Is it fallen on the floor? I rescued it for you.
The look of it alone.
Well, it's darker than it came out of the bottle. When it was poured, it looked lighter on its feet. It's darker. It's a quite dark wine, actually.
What? You like that?
Right.
The tasting notes are. It's a single.
Hold on. Don't go there yet. I gotta investigate this a little bit. Do you know what the alcohol? I'm big on alcohol content. 12.5. Love that.
It's a singular, distinct Pinot variety. ruby red in color. We would agree with that.
Dark.
With a delicate nose of berry fruit. Are you getting that? And violets.
I'm getting something. It doesn't smell like the typical kind of Burgundian Pinot. There's something else going
You know what
on.
would be interesting is to do a survey of people and ask them if they knew what violets smelled like.
Not really, no.
'Cause
I don't think violets have a smell.
That's what I was going to say. Do you know what violets smell like?
I know what violets look like. I don't think they smell. Okay, go on.
Apparently, it's in the nose here. It's
not.
balanced, it's soft, elegant tannins with a taste of berry fruit. Fresh and lively on the palate. That I'm going to have to try.
It's almost meaty smelling. That's what I'm picking up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right.
It's kind of like animal-y. It's not
Not barnyard.
not barnyard, definitely not barnyard, but meaty animal. It's not a typical European style Pinot or even a West Coast Californian. It's a distinctive nose, which I think is quite appealing. It's just caught me off guard a bit. It has a very unusual smell. But
When I was
very
there,
nice.
the winemaker, he actually hand wrote a couple of things on here, and it speaks to exactly what you just said. He said that you'll find earthiness in the nose, and maybe that's what we're getting. The earthiness.
I much prefer the taste to the nose. The taste is actually very pleasing. It's got a little bit of tartness to it, a touch of acidity, which is very nice. Mild, spiny backbone. It's a very, very nice wine.
Oh, you've nailed it.
Yeah, very, very nice wine. Sorry I didn't score it, although the scoring is a bunch of
Well, the
nonsense.
scoring is.
But just to give, from his perspective, in any event,
I think that's
nice selections. Thank you.
I think that's lovely.
Thank you for bringing that.
Lovely.
Beautiful.
And we should mention our technician brought us back a bottle of
Beaujolais from Lyon.
France, from Lyon, which will feature at one of our upcoming podcasts.
Thank you for that, Lemmy. That was very generous of you.
But we have one more subject,
Yes, we do.
and
This is insane. This one.
this is to show you the bizarreness of real estate. Just introducing it, Doug can talk about it.
This is a showstopper.
It really has to do with the exchange of keys at the time of closing. Something that I'll bet the average buyer and the average seller don't even think about when they enter into an agreement.
Well,
of purchase
particularly
and
now
sale.
because since COVID to now, it's de rigueur to leave keys in a lockbox for closing.
Yeah.
That's how it's done, and the rest of the keys on the kitchen counter. So I don't think we even think about
We
this.
should maybe what you should do is just briefly mention how we used to deal with keys before we got to the point where we had lock boxes.
Are you talking about showing keys or closing keys?
Closing.
I think we had to walk them up to the lawyer's office, if I recall.
We did that. We also left them in real estate offices.
I don't remember that. I just remember driving them up to some real estate lawyer's office, getting a receipt from the receptionist that you've left the keys. It's a big deal.
Well, tell them what happened in this case.
Well, this was kind of crazy. Some Toronto buyer paid
71,000, I think.
I think it's less, $63,000 or $65,000 for a property in Cochrane, Ontario.
8 hours from Toronto.
8 hours, sight unseen. He had a Toronto real estate agent and a Toronto lawyer. Am I getting this so far? He buys it from the Diocese of Cochrane or something, a church.
church.
Yeah, not the church, but a smaller building on a church site. Comes to closing, the buyer funds the deal, sends the money to the seller's lawyer.
And he gets it. He's in receipt of it.
He had a $9,000 deposit and $53,000 balance.
Right.
Okay. So he funds it. It's sitting in the seller's lawyer's trust account. The day of closing, the buyer's lawyer requisitions that the keys be sent to Toronto.
Correct.
8 hours away from the property.
Meanwhile, the seller, through their agent and the lawyer up in Cochrane, had arranged for the keys to be delivered to a local variety store.
Which I think was a standard operating procedure.
Yeah, it makes good sense.
It's very far away.
Yeah.
Remember, the buyer had never seen the property.
Yeah, and he's in Toronto, so even if he had the keys, it isn't like he could get in his car and drive to the property.
Right. So he raises a requisition, essentially, an objection to title, that unless the keys are delivered to Toronto, he won't close the deal. Over to you.
Well, it's exactly what happens. He says he won't close the deal. The seller, the church, as they're called in the litigation, they say, well, then you're in breach.
No, first, they offered.
They
were trying to be conciliatory.
They were conciliatory. They offered to put the keys on a bus overnight to
Right.
get them to Toronto the next day. But that wasn't good enough for the buyer.
Buyer said no.
No, buyer
Said,
said
courier
no.
it to me.
Yeah.
Even that would have missed the 6 o'clock deadline
For registering.
for registering and tendering. In other words, closing the transaction.
So try to understand this. The seller's lawyer has the proceeds of sale, but he's not registered the title to the property
And he's
to
not
the buyer.
releasing the money.
And he's not going to release the money. So he's got the $9,000 deposit plus the $50-odd thousand. This whole property was very inexpensive, and maybe that's what happens in Cochrane, but certainly not in Toronto,
Yeah,
as we know.
it's 8
We
hours
discussed
away.
it a little while ago. So
This is
one-
3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, so
now.
one thing leads to another. They don't close the deal, and the seller says, "You're in breach. I'm keeping your money."
And proceeds to resell the property.
And proceeds to resell the property. The buyer sues the seller. 5 years of litigation.
When he sues him for rescission, that
Yeah.
I had the right,
To
I'm the buyer,
terminate.
to not close the deal.
Because you didn't get me the keys where I wanted
Didn't
them.
get the keys. Well, yeah. Had he done this 3 or 4 days before, which is the conciliatory way of doing it, and courts want you to come to an arrangement to facilitate a transaction, had he given them a couple of days, could have put it on a bus and satisfied the buyer's rather obtuse request.
Correct. In fact, when you consider the legal costs that were incurred,
Wait till you get to the damages. It's good. The legal costs are a whole, they haven't even been taxed yet.
they haven't been taxed yet.
So go ahead. So what happens? Doesn't
So
close.
they go to, they ultimately get to trial. 2 days of trial.
But it took 5 years.
Years to get there.
5 years to get to a trial.
And what was
That
the
took 2
conclusion?
days. That the buyer did not have a right not to close,
Correct.
and he was in breach. So now they have to go ahead and figure out the costs.
I think the judge got it wrong.
Damages. So the amazing thing is, 5 years later, talk about abuse of our system, resells the property for over $15,000 more
More than the original sale
something
price.
in the $70,000+ range. So the seller benefits by an additional $15,000. And they have to determine how much is owed, because the buyer had no right not to close. They were at fault. They did the cost analysis. Because of the $15,000 lift, all the buyer had to pay in damages was
$271.
$219.
I got that wrong?
Got that wrong. $219 after 5 years.
I think that
and
decision
2 years
is
of
wrong.
trial.
That decision is wrong.
Totally wrong. The buyer had
The seller should at least been able to keep the deposit, the $9,000.
exactly.
Because that's normally what happens when there's a breach. And the court determined there was a breach by the buyer.
It's unbelievable in my estimation that $9,000 deposit wasn't forfeited to the seller. It's crazy. This is probably the craziest case.
One of
we've
the worst I've ever
had.
seen. One of the worst. And it ain't over yet because they're still taxing some of
The
issues.
cost might be enormous.
Yeah. All for a key. So we have covered, I think, the alpha to the omega of real estate today. And I think 2 lovely wines. You would agree?
I do very, very much.
Highly
Those are-
recommend them.
I think in episode 7 onwards, I think we would do better justice with these wines, to Christian's point, that they should be opened for 45 minutes or an hour before, because both are considerably better than they were
I'm really
when we
starting to
opened
groove
them.
off the Chardonnay now.
Yeah.
I don't believe these are available at the LCBO, but certainly if you're doing a little trip to the county, highly recommend you visit the vineyard.
People will ask, so we might as well say, do you have a rough ballpark on price on these wines?
They're about $70 each.
Oh, well, good for Ontario wine producers producing wine of this caliber and being able to get those kind of prices. Because with these small production, they have to be able
It's
to.
very small production. I
have
think I
to
told
charge
you, I
this kind
think,
of money.
how many cases they do of each one. Very small. Oh, like
Excellent.
150 cases or something.
Okay, so we've now covered 3 topics today. It was a trifurcated event today.
It was definitely trifurcated. And on that note, thank you everyone
See you
for
next time.
listening in.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.